Welcome to the fourth week of guided doodling with the Jeweled Leaves collection. We've already created quite a collection of doodle ideas for our doodle library. In the previous sessions, we have our lines, our circles, triangles, dots, V's, and teardrops. And we've created really beautiful designs using them to connect the shapes within the mandala. Today, we're going to add 2 more shapes to the doodle library. So I have my guided doodling sheet here, and then I have an ultra fine tip marker. And again, you could use a pencil, a pen, or a marker, whatever you choose. So in this first box, we're going to start with squares. Now I considered adding rectangles to this, but we're going with the theme of limitations or constraints breed creativity. And what that means is that limiting ourselves to squares rather than adding rectangles within this is going to allow us to come up with some creative ways to use the squares. So the first line I did equal squares, equal size and distance apart, and now I'm coming up with a pattern. And some of the squares might end up looking a little bit like rectangles, but I'm not concerning myself too much about that or at all. I'm just continuing on doing these small squares and then bigger squares. I'm just seeing where my hands guide me. So doing squares inside of squares, and maybe a little square. So just coming up with a pattern here. Just doing squares. Releasing any thoughts of perfection with getting these just right. And just thinking I could do squares that are touching. Just a whole line of squares that are touching each other. And when I'm doing these, I actually don't have to draw that one side because it's already drawn. I'm just doing the squares. Maybe I want to do another pattern with squares touching where I'm doing a big one and then 3 small ones, something like this. I'm just seeing what comes up for me as I move my hands, and just thinking about squares. I could do them like this, so coming up with a pattern like this, going up and down, and continuing across there. Just seeing how it feels to draw squares. And then once I fill that box with ideas, I'm going to move on to the shapes here, and I'm going to think of ways to add squares within the shapes. So maybe I want to try this, the touching squares across. And again, you can add as much detail as you like if you want to fill the whole thing with little squares that are touching. You could do that. Maybe I just want to do 2 lines. And then maybe do another line of squares there. And here I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to try, instead of having them line up exactly, I don't know if you can see this, but they're kind of going back and forth. They're not directly underneath each other in that second line. It's hard to see because it's kind of small. Maybe adding another square up here with a square inside of it. And again, the whole thing doesn't have to make sense as a design together. I'm just coming up with ideas. And then once I'm finished with the first shape, moving on to the next one. Maybe doing something like this, where there's squares on the corner of the squares. Do another one up here. And I'm just trying things out. Just releasing any thoughts about not liking it, and just moving along. Just seeing where my hands guide me. Sometimes something I don't like at first, I go back and look at it and I like it. I'm sure that's happened to you before. I'm just doing squares. And moving on to the last shape here. Maybe I just want to add one square. And I'll leave it like that. And then the next thing I want to do is think about how I can add squares to the outside of the shapes. How can I challenge myself to add squares? Now I could do a square that's set on a corner. It looks kind of like a diamond, but not quite. I think of a diamond as more tapered. It's kind of challenging to make this symmetrical when I'm doing it like that. But there's two squares, and I can continue that out. So just coming up with ideas on the outside of the shapes. Maybe just doing square like this. And feeling the difference between the angle that I'm drawing this square on. It's much easier to do this one and this one, but when I'm doing it at an angle, it's a little bit more challenging for me. And continuing to move on to the next shape. And that one didn't look too much like a square, but I'm continuing on. And that's why I like to use the marker, because it just allows me to commit to my mark and move on instead of erasing and worrying. But whatever feels comfortable for you. You can do as many of these sheets as you'd like. And then once you're done with the squares, sometimes maybe going back, you want to add some more like I just did. But once you're done with the squares, we're going to go on to the next shape. And what I want to do here is to do some spirals. So starting in the second box in the upper left, I'm going to do spirals. Just trying to get them equal size, equal distance apart as much as I can, but not worrying about being exact. Just moving along. And then thinking of other patterns that I can do. So looking at that tail, I can, tighten it up more like this type of spiral. So just playing with that starting point and seeing how different those look. And then maybe putting spirals together. Do something like that. Connecting the tails. So anything that you can think of with spirals. Maybe instead of going inward with the spiral, going in this direction. So just playing with the direction and see how different that looks. like that. Whoops. I'm going to do this one like that because I messed up. And that added some interest there. And seeing if there's anything else that I can think of, just doing a big one and a small one connected. And seeing how that goes. Whatever comes to mind for you with spirals. And then moving inside the shapes, we're going to add spirals. Just allowing your hands to move. For me, this is taking a little bit more thought than some of the other patterns or marks that we've made. But they're kind of an exciting shape to make. And I'm moving on to the next. Just seeing where my hands lead me, seeing what ideas come to me. Doing one in the center that has a tight, it goes tight to it. And then moving on. So adding as many or as few spirals as you want to each of these. I'm really trying to fill this one up. Considering adding one more here. And then once you fill up the shapes however you'd like with the spirals, thinking about what you can add to the outside. What can we do with spirals on the outside of the shapes? Do 3 on the outside of this one. And I can just leave it like that, or I can do it symmetric. Maybe for this one, I'm going to add another one down here, and I'm going to just leave them just on the one side. And do I want to add one more up here? And then moving on. Just trying to come up with ideas with the spirals on the outside. Seeing which shapes need more concentration. For me, this certainly does. As I try to get them going in the same direction. That's looking really cool. I'm liking that design there. And then like that. Use one with the spiral going in as opposed to going out. And anything else I can think of. So these ones went up. Maybe I'll try down for these ones. And just scanning, seeing if there's anything else that I'd like to add. I'm feeling like I have a nice library of ideas there, and I'm going to move on to the mandala. And what we're going to do is be connecting the shapes with the spirals and the squares. So both of these, for me, they take a little bit more concentration than some of the other shapes that we've made in the past lessons. I'm going to just try to relax into it. So see where I want to add squares. Not putting a judgment on it, just coming up with ideas. Not worrying about being exact. So here I'm thinking about doing a spiral like this, like that. This is going outward. Just let my hands guide me. Even with that, when I'm trying to replicate it, I find that here I gotta talk to myself a little bit, saying spiral on the outside. And then scanning, seeing what else, where else do I want to do squares? Do I want to do spirals? Maybe doing more of a tight one here. It closes on itself instead of a long tail. Seeing what it looks like to have shapes that have straight edges and corners like the squares, with the spirals that are just rounded. Just playing with that. And here I'm going to extend this down with a spiral. I'm looking at this side, a spiral. So pretty much keeping my drawing hand in the same spot, but rotating the paper. That's what I find's the easiest, so I'm not going across and smudging things. I'm really liking how this is. I'm considering doing the same, but what if I did something different and did 2 squares here? Not sure if I'm going to like it, but better to try something just to see. This makes it interesting to have this not be symmetric here. It's symmetric in the sense that I'm doing the same thing for each of these, but not in the sense that one side has a spiral and the other doesn't, and that looks pretty cool. So I'm just scanning and I'm seeing if there's anything else. I'm looking, should I connect this? Just coming up with ideas. And in this exercise, it's just about exploring, trying it if it comes to mind, and then knowing that you can print as many as you'd like and try different things. And I am finished, so I'm liking this just as it is. I'm going to cap my pen. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed these sessions, and I look forward to seeing what you've created for your guided doodling sessions. Thank you so much for joining me.